Hello, you're listening to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is the 12th of December. A rather dull day it was too, and I'm just going to do a little introduction to this video here. For the purpose of this video, I thought it'd be nice to do the opposite route that I did with Gabby last week, which was from Bray to Greystones, but to do it from Greystones to Bray, but with the interesting perspective of it done by train. Now, it's a 6-mile journey, and was opened. The Dublin to Wexford line was fully opened in 1872, and with the addition of the Rosslare section opened in 1882. Now, there's a 60-mile-an-hour limit between Greystones and Dublin. Now, I suppose the purpose of this video really is that today is the 5th anniversary of the signing of the Global Compact in Migration in Marrakesh and the Marrakesh Political Declaration. Now, the Marrakesh Political Declaration, which involved the movement of people from Africa into Europe, keeping in mind that the previous president of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, stated on a Euronews interview that the EU had invested 44 billion in Africa and wanted a return for their investment. And the Global Compact on Migration, which was said to be non-binding, and yet anytime migration is discussed, international obligations is always mentioned. And here's a recording of Simon Coveney being asked about these two documents, which was surely a document that, as important as this, should have been brought to the attention of the public and a public debate on this. Now, the original recording was made available to the All Red YouTube channel, and before the video was removed, it had 10,000 views. And interestingly, the video also made its way to Stefan Molyneux, who had an Ireland 2040 video where he read out about the perspective of what was happening, and that video had 275,000 views. The recording was mentioned in that video, and it had 275,000 views before it was removed. Now, just as an observation, one of the unforeseen consequences of inward migration into Ireland is that we now have the highest rates of HIV in Europe at 17.5 per 100,000 people, which is 3 times the European average, with 20% from Eastern and Central Europe, 22% from Sub-Saharan Africa, and 25% from Latin America, with only 10% of those from Ireland. Now, it's time that those entering Ireland, especially those seeking international protection, should have their identity verified. They should be tested and screened for infectious diseases and checked for criminal records. This madness has to end soon. I hope you enjoy the recording. Good evening, good luck, and God bless.
I would just like to ask the people here, right? Has anybody heard of the Marrakesh Political Declaration? Or has anybody heard of the Global Compact for Safe and Secure Migration? Yeah. Now, this document, if I'm not mistaken, Táiniste, is going to be signed in Marrakesh next month, is that correct? Which will actually legalise illegal migration, and it's been pushed by the UN. So basically, we have this country being dictated to by the bureaucrats in the EU, and now we have to worry about the bureaucrats in the UN. It's involving 193 countries, and so far Austria, Australia, America, Slovakia, Estonia, Croatia, Belgium, Bulgaria, and Switzerland, and Hungary and Poland have refused to sign it. And Israel, thank you. So, can you please tell the people, why there is a media blackout about this? There is no discussion on RTE, News Talk, or any radio station about this. And if you look, for instance, Africa, the population of Africa is supposed to triple between now and 2070, and that 40% of the African population is 15 years old or younger, and they want to go somewhere. And I'm very frightened to the implications of uncontrolled migration into Europe and this country will actually have. Okay,
thank you very much. In terms of the Global Compact on migration, look, I mean, one of the most divisive political issues globally today is migration. whether it's the US-Mexico border, whether it's the Mediterranean, whether it's the eastern borders of the European Union, particularly through Turkey, or whether it's the 4 million or so people who are on the move at any given time on the continent of Africa, between countries and within countries, between regions. And so what the UN is trying to do is trying to get a global consensus in terms of how countries should respond to the challenge of migration. In terms of getting the balance right between countries having the right, of course, to protect the integrity of their borders, but at the same time responding in a responsible and humanitarian way to people who are either refugees or seeking asylum. Of course, many people on the move are economic migrants who fall not comfortably into any one category. I think the UN are right to try to get.
I think it'd be a disaster.
Hang on a second. On a set of standards. I think the EU, quite frankly, is struggling with this issue too. And if you compare the approach of countries down the sort of eastern borders, if you like, of the European Union, from Poland to Hungary to the Czech Republic to Slovakia, down into Italy now, and even some parts of Germany, and you compare that to the approach on migration in countries on the western side, it is causing a lot of tension and friction. Efforts, for example, with relatively small numbers in a global context, to ask every country to take a quota of refugees that may have crossed the Mediterranean. And in some cases, you're talking about hundreds or in the single figures in terms of thousands. That has created deep political divisions across the European Union. And so you're right. On the continent of Africa, in the next 25 to 30 years, we expect that there'll be an extra billion people on that continent.
And if you look, sorry, Minister,
a continent that is struggling to deal with its current population. And so we need to find new ways of addressing the realities of the mass movement of people by trying to create economies and societies that people want to be part of. I mean, if you take an example of this, in Ethiopia, which has a rapidly growing population, to simply keep unemployment at the rate that it's at today, because of there's so many extra young people coming of age in terms of employability, they need to create an extra 2 million jobs every year. That's all the jobs in Ireland. Every year needs to be added to the working population of Ethiopia alone to simply keep pace with their population growth. Next door, in Kenya, it's an extra 1 million people. Like, these are impossible numbers.
But they also have birth rates between 5 and 9 children per woman, so they have to reduce that as well.
We need to help them reduce that. All the science will show you that as economies develop and grow, birth rates also fall. And so this is part of the development challenge that the EU has to take on with a much, much more ambitious partnership with Africa. Partly because of what we know the alternative would be, which is a huge migration challenge for the EU. Instead of there being hundreds of thousands of people looking to enter the EU, we may well be in the millions. And all of the tensions that will cause. And we need to comprehensively deal across the European Union with this migration challenge. Otherwise, we will continue to see electorates pushing governments to the hard right on migration, which is something that I think we need to avoid, because it is something that I think the EU collectively will really struggle to deal with otherwise. So it's a very fair point that you raise.
Will you be making a statement on it?
I happen to be somebody who is quite liberal on migration. I believe that Ireland has been enhanced significantly by the fact that so many people who are not born in Ireland are now part of our society and economy. But of course, we need to also ensure that we can manage the numbers that are being welcomed and that they can integrate appropriately. We estimate, and I was saying it earlier, over the next 20 years that the population of Ireland will certainly grow by an extra 1 million people. Linked to that estimate is that half of that number won't have been born in Ireland. I think that would be a really good thing for Irish society, but we do need to manage it carefully, so that we don't allow the politics of migration to play a big part in Irish politics, because I think it pulls us down a dangerous direction. But the Global Compact on migration is controversial. It's difficult because migration is very controversial. But this is the UN trying to get this balance right between the obligations that countries have and also the entitlements that they have to protect their borders as well.